If you liked the video, remember to like, comment, and sub. I've also made a Discord server. If you want to join, check the description for a link. It makes no difference what men think of war, said the judge. War endures, as well ask men what they think of stone. War was always here. Before man was, war waited for him. The ultimate trade awaiting its ultimate practitioner. That is the way it was, and will be, that way, and not some other way. War is God. What does Blood Meridian have to do with Hotline Miami? Nothing, everything, everything and nothing all at the same time. The judge argues that to look for meaning in war is pointless. War is ever present. It's part of us. It was here before us, and since the moment man picked up a rock and smashed his fellow man's brains out across the dry earth, war, and therefore violence, has been an inherent trait of humanity. Sometimes we like to add layers to it, make it more noble than what it is at a base level. Justify it with excuses, self-defense, survival, necessity, heroism, the search for a greater reason. Why do we find it so hard to admit that as a species, we sometimes just enjoy violence? How many more times do we need the media we consume to beat us over the head with some implied sense of guilt? Look at you, you horrid little creature. How dare you enjoy the violence that is completely separate from reality in this game, film, book, work of art? Some might argue that Hotline Miami itself judges you. When Richard asks you, do you like hurting other people? I would have to disagree. While there is an overwhelming thematic sense that war and violence are in fact pointless and self-repeating throughout the two games, I don't believe they ever truly condemn you for enjoying it. What they do condemn you for is wanting a conclusion, a reward for slaughtering hundreds of people. People always want to feel and be told that they accomplished something heroic. But the game, especially Richard, makes it very clear that you're only doing it because you enjoy it. The first game actively mocks you for trying to find the reason that you get the phone calls directing you to where and when to commit your acts of wanton violence. It mocks you because for some reason, you can't just admit to the man in the chicken mask or yourself that you are doing it because you like it. Some of you might be trying to figure out where I'm going with this. Those who are impatient and always want answers from everything right away. We'll get there at some point, maybe. Until then, why not just enjoy the fever dream? Why not throw yourself off the cliff and into the violent spiral of madness, arms open and eyes wide? The flow of violence. If you ever play Hotline Miami, the first thing that will strike you is, of course, the simplicity of it. The gameplay does not ask for very much from you in terms of preparation or memorizing long combos or knowing in-depth mechanics. It simply plops a mask on your character jacket, a clear analog for someone else you might be familiar with, and points you in the direction of those on whom you shall impart savage violence. And you do. Why do you do it? Because random phone calls tell you to? No. You do it because it's fun. The simplicity of the game is one of the first ingredients in its reward loop. The top-down view means you can always see just enough to not have to think too hard. You can almost rely solely on reactions and animal instinct with these games. You can rush headfirst into any one area and immediately enter a flow state, going from enemy to enemy, using your fists, objects lying around the area, doors, weapons those enemies are carrying. It's a constant stream of dopamine, a constant flow of bloody action. Clearing a floor in Hotline Miami is like nothing else of its kind. Your objective is straightforward. The gameplay rewards you for being vicious and fast, for tearing through areas in a haze of blood spray and overwhelming visual noise. The faster you go, the more consistent your combo, the more variety and the brutality of your kills, the higher the score at the end of the level. Of course, you really do have variety. Firstly, there's the tools of violence at your disposal. Throughout both games, you have access to an obscene amount of both melee weapons and firearms. From something as simple as a hammer to something as ridiculous as a katana. From a surgical silenced pistol to devastating shotguns that scatter viscera across nearly the entire screen. The arsenal with which to do harm onto others in Hotline Miami is so large that most people will likely never even use every single item available for them to pick up, especially not in their first run, maybe not even in the second run of the game. Then there's maybe the most iconic visual of the series, the masks. In Hotline Miami 1 specifically, you have access to a repertoire of masks, ranging from the default Richard to the tiger comically named Tony. Each mask brings with it a modifier, from something as simple as Tony allowing you to kill with your punches, to more elaborate masks, like Don Juan, which makes any door you open onto an enemy lethal. Phil, which turns all dialogue in the game into badly translated French, and Jones, which makes all kills even bloodier. In Hotline 2, the masks and abilities are restricted to the specific characters who wear them, but you are still offered a number of choices regardless who you play as. You want to know what I think is the smartest design decision of the game? You are as weak, frail, and prone to death as any single being that you murder throughout this series. Every single way that you see the sprites of enemies eviscerated, torn apart, and sprayed around the locales available, you can also experience yourself. So how do the devs keep this from ruining the flow? How do they keep it from making you feel anger instead of satisfaction? Death is instant, and starting again is the same. On almost every single level in this series, to die is to instantly be back at the start of the area, ready to test out a different path or a series of fast fire actions. You never feel like you're ripped out of the blood haze. You never have to stop. The single second between death and being tossed right into the fray is just enough for your brain on an animal level to register why you died, and maybe avoid it the next time around. One of the greatest strengths of Hotline as a whole package is that due to how engaging and blood pumping the gameplay loop as well as the variety mentioned earlier are, it remains infinitely replayable. You can always go back to any level and try for a higher score, or for some sort of challenge, or to see if you could have beaten it with a different mask or weapon combination. Or just because you miss the adrenaline pumping through your veins as you instinctively carve your way through random, nameless, faceless goons. Why overthink things? The violence never truly ends. Music to kill for. I've always made it clear I am more of a vibes sort of creator. Even these videos I make are first and foremost about emotion, vibes, the things that I feel and am made to feel by art I've consumed and engaged with. Well, Hotline Miami knows what a vibe is. On offer in this series is one of the best soundtracks ever put together. It includes a number of pieces of music that have remained or were already in my playlists permanently. A great mix of synthwave, ambient, and instrumental tracks from incredible artists like Moon, Carpenter Brut, Scattle, Perturbator, El Huervo, and too many more to name here. The way that music is used in Hotline Miami works hand in hand with enhancing the dopamine rush created by the balls to the wall, relentless gameplay. Every single level has its own track, which fits perfectly, creating an almost spiritual rhythm for the slaughter that is to follow. You have to be in some way defective not to find yourself bobbing along to some of the tracks, not timing your movements and attacks in line with the constant beat. There are very few other games I can think of where the music feels like it's such an integral part of it. It does more work to set the tone and energy of the ultra-violent action than almost any other element except for the gameplay itself. The perfect music for the bloody neon setting of an 80s drug-fueled Miami, where your only reason to be is to paint the town red. Of course, there's also the incredible switch. The moment you've killed everything in the level, the music stops. Suddenly, you're hit with a very moody, ambient track to simulate the come down after a high. Now that the violence has been performed, now that it's over, suddenly you have to wade your way back to the exit of the level, with this new emotion hanging over your head. Suddenly you have to witness the consequences of your violence. To think about it, that is of course, until the next level begins, and with it the next track. Thematically and tonally, this constant shift is genius. It violently thrusts you from peaks to lows, making you appreciate every single moment where you're lost in the high-octane action, because you know how dreadful and terrible a thing that sudden silence and time to think is. You are always hungering for the start of the next level, the start of the next track. You want to drown in the noise and violence, the overwhelming audio-visual feedback of it all. Slowly but surely, you learn exactly why you yearn for that violence. Because in a world where everything is terrible, where you are surrounded constantly by the reality of the horror on all sides, being in the heat of the moment, even an ultra-violent moment, is enough to quiet the ringing in your ears. I can only ask that after watching this video, even if you have no intention of playing the game, you go and listen to this music and just let it shove its hand right into your brain, slowly stirring away at your gray matter until you're nothing but a soup of volatile emotion. Wearing their heart on your sleeve. Hotline Miami is wonderfully brazen about where its inspirations lie. It doesn't try to hide its cultural identity behind some self-proclaimed veneer of high art, where some games wield their message and themes like a club, with zero subtlety trying to guilt you and overwhelm you with the mountains of exposition to make sure you couldn't possibly miss the author's intent. Hotline Miami just lets you work it out yourself. The most obvious thing everyone recognizes is that Jacket is pretty blatantly inspired by the main character of Drive, a film that shares a lot of the violent catharsis of Hotline Miami, where a quiet loner goes on an ultra-violent mission in an attempt to make the world a better place and finally feel like a real human being, namely even wearing a rubber mask during a section of the film. Another massive inspiration, as mentioned by the devs themselves, is a documentary called Cocaine Cowboys, which depicts the level of violent hell 80s Miami became due to the consequences of the drug trade and the warring gangs running rampant. Both are recommended by me if you have the time. Of course, there are other, less obvious inspirations. From the Colonel in the second game clearly being a representation of Colonel Kurtz from Apocalypse Now, even looking a little like Marlon Brando's portrayal of the character, to the interesting use of an alternate history setting that explores a world where the Cold War between Russia and the USA never ended, but in fact continued to escalate, to the point where the two powers actively combated each other, and Russia is implied to have even been responsible for the nuclear bombing of San Francisco. The combination of inspirations that Hotline Miami presents as a series is what actually ends up making it so unique. It takes a number of different ideas, themes, and imagery from different existing media and perfectly melds it all into what is essentially a bloody fever dream. One where context is sparse, and you, the player, get to decide exactly how much or how little one even needs context. You can actively choose to ignore everything if all you want from the series is the gameplay. You can easily accept that none of it matters, and all you're here for is the fun of being violent. The game doesn't believe in punishing you for it, not in the heavy-handed way some less talented hacks do in their games. Context doesn't matter unless you want it to. This results in Hotline being a series that appeals to both kinds of players. The kinds that like digging into the theories and deeper meanings behind imagery and implications of the things they experience, and those who are just there for the thrill. Both will still get a maximum level of enjoyment out of it, but some may come away with a different idea of what it all means than others. Some may leave the series viewing it as an effective critique of the never-ending cycle of war, and how escalation will only ever lead to more escalation until the end of all things, while others are just here to take in the vibes, commit a bit of intoxicating brutality, and get on with their day same as any other. try not to think about it too much. You're not a nice person, are you? Well, lucky for you, it doesn't matter. I don't judge, neither does Hotline Miami. So if you're feeling a little violent, why not give it a try? Why not let go of all these pretensions? Drop the act and just accept yourself for what you are. I'm telling you, you're going to enjoy every moment of it, just that bit more if you stop trying to attribute meaning where none is needed. If you take experiences like Hotline Miami as they are and allow yourself to enjoy it at face value, or I suppose at a masked value, go on, get lost in the sounds and the sights. Let the noise of the savagery drown out all of those things hanging on your mind. All of those anxieties and fears slowly breaking your spine. Put on that mask and for just one moment, accept your true nature. Do you see this? Can you see my face? This is my true nature. You see, don't you? This is who I am. This is who we all are. We're animals. There's no denying it. A bunch of goddamn animals. They're sending us out to slaughter or be slaughtered. And here we sit until they tell us what to do and how to do it. No will of our own, just mindless obedience. We don't even know why we're fighting now, do we? All we know is that deep down, somewhere in there, we enjoy it. Destruction and violence. It's all just a part of our nature. Hope you've enjoyed this less than conventional video where I talk about Hotline Miami. I've wanted to cover these games for a long time now because to me they're two of the most perfect pieces of just visual stimulus you're ever gonna experience. But yeah, go give them a look and see you in the next video.